Kate thought she knew what marriage meant: companionship, kindness, respect. But passion? That was a word that never found its way into their bedroom. Andrew was gentle, considerate, but his hands never lingered. His kisses were polite, brief, like something he was checking off a list. She told herself it was enough, until one ordinary night in the kitchen, when his hands found her waist with an urgency she'd never felt before. And in that moment, everything she thought she understood about her husband shattered. Kate always knew Andrew was different. From their very first date, he carried that aura of a gentle man, polite, thoughtful, but wrapped in an invisible layer of restraint, as if there were a thin pane of glass between him and the rest of the world. She fell in love with the way he looked at her, as if he were trying to decipher an ancient language he'd never learned. There was something vulnerable in that gaze, something that made her want to get closer, to break down that invisible wall. But marriage brought an uncomfortable truth. Andrew didn't touch her. Not the way she'd hoped. Not the way her body ached for. His kisses were brief, almost too polite a peck before leaving for work, a side hug while watching TV. His hands never explored, never lingered on her skin. It was as if he were afraid of breaking her, or breaking himself. Kate tried to understand. Maybe he was just reserved. Maybe he needed time. Maybe this was how he showed love, through practical gestures, careful words, silent presence beside her every night. She convinced herself it was okay, that love didn't need to be made of urgent passion and desperate hands. But at night, when silence filled the bedroom and Andrew slept peacefully beside her, Kate lay awake. Her thoughts wandered to places she didn't dare share. Did he not desire her? Was there something wrong with her? With him? With both of them? The air between them was heavy, with things left unsaid, a tension that hung like fog, invisible but undeniable. At dinners out, she'd watch couples around them, hands intertwined on the table, knowing glances, discreet but intentional touches, and she'd feel a pang in her chest. Not exactly jealousy, but a kind of longing for something she'd never had. On an ordinary Tuesday, the smell of sautéed garlic filled the kitchen as Kate chopped carrots under the amber glow of the pendant light. The rhythmic sound of the knife against the wooden cutting board was almost hypnotic. She was barefoot, wearing only an oversized t-shirt and pajama shorts, her hair pulled into a messy bun. It was a domestic scene, mundane, unglamorous. Andrew had gotten home from work a few minutes earlier. She'd heard him climb the stairs, change clothes, come back down. She felt his presence approaching the kitchen but didn't turn around. She kept chopping, focused on the repetitive, almost meditative motion. Then she felt it. Firm, sure hands settled on her waist. It wasn't an accidental touch. It wasn't a casual gesture in passing. It was intentional, deliberate. His warm palms adjusted perfectly to the curves of her body, as if they'd been molded for that exact fit. Kate froze. The knife stopped mid-air. Andrew pressed his body against hers slowly, but with a firmness she'd never felt before. His chest against her back, his breathing quick, uneven, brushing the nape of her neck. "I think about you more than I show," he murmured, his voice husky, low, loaded with something she couldn't name. The hair on Kate's neck stood on end. Her heart raced. She set the knife down on the cutting board, her hands trembling slightly. He didn't pull away. On the contrary, his fingers tightened gently on her waist, as if he were anchoring himself to her, as if finally he'd found the courage to cross that invisible glass that had always separated them. "Andrew," she whispered, but couldn't finish the sentence. He leaned in, his lips nearly touching the sensitive skin behind her ear. "I want you, Kate. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it." His voice was a confession, vulnerable, raw, real. Kate closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the warmth radiating from his body, the smell of soap and something indefinable, masculine, that was uniquely his, the texture of his hands slightly rough from someone who works with papers and pens, but now exploring with reverent delicacy. She turned her face slightly, just enough for their eyes to meet, and what she saw there completely undid her. Desire. It wasn't just affection. It wasn't just abstract, conceptual love. It was pure desire, urgent, held back for far too long. Andrew's brown eyes were dark, dilated, fixed on her as if she were the only thing that existed in the universe. "Then show me," she whispered, her voice coming out shaky but firm. "Show me now." He took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into deep waters. Then, slowly, he turned Kate to face him. Her back pressed against the counter. He placed his hands on either side of her, trapping her not with force, but with intention. Their faces were inches apart, one breath mixed with the other. Time seemed to have slowed, as if the universe were waiting to see what would happen next. Andrew lifted his hand and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering along her jawline, tracing the contour with torturous slowness. "You're so beautiful, Kate. Every single day. And I've been a fool for not showing you." She felt her eyes burn, not with sadness, but with relief. With something inside her finally being seen, recognized, desired. He leaned in, and when his lips touched hers, it was different from every kiss they'd ever shared. It wasn't polite. It wasn't brief. It was deep, lingering, full of a hunger that was being satisfied for the first time. His hands slid down the sides of her body, exploring with a mixture of curiosity and urgency. Kate clutched his shoulders, feeling the tense muscles beneath his shirt. She pulled him closer, eliminating any space that still remained between them. The kiss deepened. Tongues met, explored, got to know each other. Low moans escaped from her, from him, from both. The world around them disappeared. There was no more kitchen, no forgotten vegetables, no pendant light. Only this connection existed finally, fully. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Andrew rested his forehead against hers, eyes still closed, as if he were memorizing that moment. "I want to learn everything about you," he whispered. "Everything you like. Everything that makes you feel alive." Kate smiled, silent tears sliding down her face. "Then stay," she said. Simple but loaded with meaning. "Stay with me. Like this." He opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her believe that maybe the marriage she thought she knew was only just beginning. Something had changed. Kate felt it in the way the air vibrated when Andrew entered a room, in the way the silence between them stopped being empty and became charged heavy with unexplored possibilities. In the days following that night in the kitchen, she started noticing the details. Small gestures that previously went unnoticed now gained sharp edges, hidden meanings. How Andrew would get closer than necessary when handing her a glass of water. How his fingers would brush hers for a fraction of a second longer. How he'd pause when passing her in the hallway, his body almost touching hers, but not quite, as if he were testing the limits of a new language. It was a subtle dance, almost imperceptible to outside eyes. But for Kate, each movement was an earthquake. One morning, she was in the bathroom putting lotion on her hands when she noticed his reflection in the mirror. Andrew was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame, just watching. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His gaze spoke volumes, lingering on the curve of her neck, on the movement of her hands on her still damp skin. Kate pretended not to notice, but felt the heat rising through her chest. Her cheeks felt her body awakening under that gaze. It was strange, this feeling of being seen, truly seen, after so long feeling invisible. "You're staring," she said, without taking her eyes off her own reflection, a smile playing on her lips. "I know," he replied without looking away. "Can't help it." She turned slowly, leaning against the sink, crossing her arms not defensively but provocatively. "And what exactly are you looking at?" Andrew took a step into the bathroom, then another. The space between them shrank. The smell of his aftershave, woody, slightly citrus, invaded her senses. "Everything," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "The way the light hits your skin, the way you bite your lip when you're thinking, the way you exist in this house and make it feel like home." Kate felt her heart race. He'd never talked like this, never put into words what he felt. And now each syllable was like a caress. He moved closer until only a few centimeters separated them. He raised his hand, hesitated for an instant as if still learning that he had permission, and then traced the outline of her arm with his fingertips, a touch so light it almost seemed imaginary. But her skin instantly broke out in goosebumps. "I wasted so much time," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Kate placed her hand over his, intertwining their fingers. "Then don't waste any more." They stayed like that for a moment, just breathing, just existing in the same space, finally without barriers. The nights became different. Before, they'd lie down on their respective sides of the bed, respecting invisible boundaries. Now Andrew sought Kate out. He'd pull her close, wrap his arms around her, bury his face in her hair. "You smell like lavender and something else, something that drives me crazy," he murmured one night, his lips brushing the nape of her neck. Kate laughed softly, turning in his arms to face him. "Something else?" "You, just you." She ran her fingers across his face, memorizing every angle, every texture, the stubble rough beneath her fingertips, the fine lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled. "I like this version of you," she whispered, "the one who says what he feels." "I like her too," he replied, smiling, "the one who taught me how." He kissed her then, not rushed, but intentional. A slow, exploratory kiss, as if discovering every corner of her mouth, every sigh. His hands wandered along the side of her body, tracing the curve of her waist, moving up her ribs, stopping just below her breasts, respectful, but clearly interested. Kate felt desire pulse low, insistent. She arched against him, a silent invitation. But Andrew pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. "Not yet," he said, his voice husky. "I want to take my time with you. Learn every inch, every sound you make, every way I can make you feel good." She moaned, softly, frustrated and aroused at the same time. "You're torturing me." "No," he corrected, smiling in a way she'd never seen before, confident, almost mischievous. "I'm savoring you." Kate started testing the limits, teasing him in subtle ways. She wore tighter shirts, walked around the house barefoot, knowing he was watching every movement, lingered in the shower, leaving the door ajar, knowing he was on the other side, fighting the urge to come in. It was a delicious game, an anticipation that made every touch, every glance, every word charged with electricity. One night, she came out of the bathroom wearing only a thin t-shirt, which went down to mid-thigh. Andrew was sitting in bed, leafing through a book, but his eyes lifted the instant she appeared. The book was forgotten. He watched her in silence, his gaze slowly traveling over every exposed inch. His jaw tightened. His fingers closed on the sheet. "You look beautiful like that," he said, his voice strained. Kate approached slowly, stopping at the foot of the bed. "Like this?" she teased, feigning innocence. "It's just a shirt." "It's my shirt," he corrected, his gaze intense. "On your body, and you know exactly what you're doing." She smiled, climbing onto the bed, crawling toward him. She stopped just inches away, eyes fixed on his. "And what am I doing?" He grabbed her by the wrist, making her fall onto him. His hands immediately went to her waist, holding her firmly as she balanced on his thighs. "Driving me insane," he whispered, his face buried in her neck, his breath hot against her skin. "Every single day. Every single moment." Kate felt her whole body vibrate. His hands moved up her back underneath the shirt, exploring bare skin. She arched, her breasts pressing against his chest. "Then stop holding back," she challenged, her voice shaky with desire. Andrew pulled back enough to look into her eyes, and what she saw there left her breathless hunger, pure and raw. "Soon," he promised, his voice deep, loaded with unfulfilled promises. "Very soon. But when I finally have you, Kate, I want to do it right. I want to make you feel everything I should have made you feel from day one." She moaned, frustrated, but also deeply touched, because he wasn't just desiring her, he was honoring her. "You're impossible," she murmured, but she was smiling. "And you're mine," he responded, sealing the statement with a kiss that left them both breathless. When they pulled apart, Kate lay down beside him, her head on his chest, listening to his racing heart. "I waited so long for this," she confessed softly. "I know," he said, his fingers drawing lazy circles on her back. "And I'm sorry. But I'm here now, completely here." Kate closed her eyes, feeling peace mix with anticipation. And as sleep slowly pulled her under, a single certainty pulsed in her mind. The best was still to come. Kate woke before Andrew that Saturday morning. The light filtered through the curtains, painting golden stripes across his face, still relaxed in sleep. She just lay there watching the way his dark lashes rested against his skin, the subtle movement of his chest rising and falling, his hand stretched out toward her over the sheet, as if even while sleeping he was searching for her. Something fundamental had reconfigured between them. It wasn't just the physical touch, though, that had become constant, almost addictive. It was the way he looked at her now, as if he'd finally removed a blindfold he'd been wearing for years and could, for the first time, truly see her. She slipped out of bed carefully, went down to the kitchen, made coffee. The strong, comforting smell filled the house. She was cracking eggs into a pan when she felt his arms wrapping around her from behind. It was no longer a surprise. It was a delicious expectation. "Good morning," he murmured against her hair, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning," she replied, smiling, leaning back against his body. Andrew kissed the top of her head, then her temple, then the curve where her neck met her shoulder, each kiss lingering, intentional. His hands rested on her hips, his thumbs drawing slow circles over her thin t-shirt. "I could get used to this," she said softly. "You'd better get used to it," he replied, pulling her a little tighter. "Because I'm not going anywhere." The days started to have a different texture. Every ordinary moment, making dinner, watching TV, folding laundry, transformed into an opportunity for connection. Kate noticed how Andrew created excuses to touch her. He'd adjust her necklace even when it didn't need adjusting, remove an imaginary thread from her hair, hold her hand while driving his thumb, caressing her knuckles. They were small gestures, but each one carried the weight of everything that had gone unsaid for years. One afternoon, she was in the makeshift office working on her laptop when Andrew appeared with a cup of tea. He set it beside her keyboard, then just stood there watching. "What?" she asked, without taking her eyes off the screen, but smiling. "Nothing. Just you working. Focused. It's beautiful to watch." Kate finally looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "Beautiful? I didn't even brush my hair properly today." Andrew crouched beside the chair, turning her face toward him. "Exactly," he said. "Serious. You don't even try, and you're still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She felt the blush rise to her cheeks. Even after so many years together, he could make her feel like a teenager with a new crush. "You're being ridiculous." "I'm being honest," he corrected, leaning in to kiss her, a soft kiss that deepened when she responded, her hand rising to tangle in the hair at the nape of his neck. When they pulled apart, both were breathing a little faster. "I should let you work," he said, but didn't move. "You should," she agreed, but pulled him back for another kiss. Kate started planning small moments, gestures that invited intimacy without forcing it. One night, while they were preparing dinner together, she put on a soft playlist, guitar, jazz, voices that whispered about love and desire. The amber light of the kitchen created a bubble around them, separating them from the rest of the world. Andrew was chopping garlic, focused, when Kate came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Dance with me," she asked. He laughed, surprised. "Here? Now? I'm covered in garlic. I don't care." He set down the knife, quickly wiped his hands on the dish towel, and turned to her. He pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other intertwined with hers. They moved slowly, without technique, just swaying to the rhythm of the music. Kate rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong, solid, present. "I love this," she murmured. "What? Dancing in the kitchen? This, us, the way you're here, with me, really here." Andrew stopped moving. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. He raised his hand, brushed the hair from her face with his fingers, the touch lingering along her jawline. "Kate," he began, his voice serious, "I know I was distant for a long time, and I'm sorry for that. But I need you to know that you taught me how to feel again. You taught me that it's okay to want, that it's okay to need someone." Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "You don't need to." "I do," he interrupted gently. "Because you deserve to hear it. You deserve to know that you drive me crazy, Kate. In the best possible way. The way you hum when you're cooking. The way you curl up on the couch with a book. The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. I see all of it, and I want all of it." A tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. He wiped it away with his thumb, then leaned in and kissed the wet trail it left behind. "You're everything I didn't know I needed," he whispered against her skin. Kate pulled him into a kiss, deep, desperate, full of everything words couldn't express. His hands tightened on her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. She felt the urgency in his touch, the contained hunger that pulsed between them, When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Andrew rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, breathing deeply as if trying to anchor himself. "I want you," he confessed, his voice so intense it hurt, so intensely it hurts. "But I want to do this right. I want I want it to be perfect for you." Kate smiled, despite the tears. "It's already perfect because it's with you." That night after dinner, they settled on the couch, Kate between his legs, her back against his chest, a light blanket over both of them. The TV was on, but neither was paying attention. Andrew ran his fingers along her bare arm, tracing invisible lines from shoulder to wrist, a touch so light it sent shivers along the entire length. He explored every inch as if memorizing a map. "What are you thinking about?" Kate asked, her voice drowsy. "That I could do this forever," he replied. "Just touch you. Learn you." She turned her head slightly, her lips brushing his jaw. "I want you to know me," she whispered. "Everything about me." Andrew slid his hand up her arm again, this time moving up the side of her body, following the curve of her waist, slowly rising until he stopped just below her breasts. He hesitated there, his breathing deepening against the nape of her neck. "I want to know everything that makes you feel good," he murmured. "Everything that makes you sigh. Everything that makes you shiver." Kate felt heat spread through her body. She arched slightly against him, a silent invitation. "Then find out," she challenged, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned her face toward him, capturing her lips in a slow, deep kiss. The hand that had been still finally moved, sliding over her breast, through her blouse, squeezing gently. Kate moaned softly into the kiss, and felt his body respond tense, controlled. "You're killing me, Kate," he murmured against her lips. "Killing me in such a sweet way." She turned completely in his arms, straddling his lap, their faces inches apart. His eyes were dark, dilated with desire. "Then let me bring you back to life," she whispered, and kissed him with everything she had. His hands wandered over her back, her waist, her hips, exploring with a mixture of reverence and urgency. She could feel his heart racing against her chest, his ragged breathing, the control he was fighting to maintain. And in that moment, with their bodies intertwined, the kisses growing more intense, and the world completely forgotten around them, Kate knew she was ready, and so was he. The days that followed brought a subtle but undeniable change. Andrew didn't just touch Kate when the opportunity arose. He created opportunities. He sought her out as if her body had developed its own magnetism, drawing his hands in ways that previously seemed impossible. It was Monday morning. Kate was brushing her teeth in the bathroom, still drowsy, when she felt Andrew approach from behind. He didn't say anything. He just slid his hands along the sides of her body from shoulders to hips, slowly mapping each curve like someone studying sacred territory. She stopped brushing, watching through the mirror. His eyes were fixed on her through the reflection, intense, focused, as if he were memorizing something important. "You're going to be late for work," she said, her voice muffled by the toothbrush. "I don't care," he replied, his lips brushing the side of her neck. She rinsed her mouth, turned to face him. There was a new confidence in him, something that hadn't been there weeks ago. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. The certainty that he had the right to desire her, to touch her, to want her. "Andrew," she started. But he interrupted her with a kiss, soft but deep, the kind of kiss that said "Good morning, and I thought about you all night" at the same time. When they pulled apart, he held her face between his hands, his thumbs caressing her cheekbones. "I want to know everything about you," he said, his voice low but firm. "Everything you like, everything you don't like. I want to learn to touch you in a way that makes you forget your own name." Kate felt heat rise through her body, concentrating low, insistent. "Then start learning," she whispered. And he did. Andrew started touching more, not rushed, but with deliberate intention. Each gesture carried meaning, promise. A touch on her hip when passing her in the hallway. A kiss on her forehead followed by a look that undressed her without needing to remove any clothes. Fingers intertwined during dinner, his thumb tracing circles on her palm while they talked about their day. Kate noticed the subtle changes, the way he'd pause when she entered the room, his eyes traveling slowly before meeting hers, the way his body naturally leaned toward hers, as if gravitating around her, The way he found excuses to be close, adjusting the strap of her dress that had slipped, removing an imaginary speck from the corner of her eye, stroking her hair even when it was already perfectly arranged. During a movie one Friday night, Kate rested her head on his shoulder, seeking comfort. Andrew wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. Then he started running his fingers along her bare arm up and down, slowly tracing invisible patterns that made her skin break out in goosebumps. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel. She wasn't paying attention to the movie. All her awareness was focused on that simple touch, one that sent waves of heat through her entire body. He turned his face slightly, his lips brushing her temple. "You're trembling," he murmured. "You're making me tremble," she replied. "Honest." Andrew slid his hand from her arm to her hand, intertwining their fingers. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed each knuckle one by one, slowly, reverently, his eyes fixed on hers the entire time. "I want to know everything that makes you react like this," he said. "Every place that makes you sigh, every touch that makes you forget the rest of the world." Kate turned completely toward him, ignoring the TV. "Then why are you still waiting?" He smiled that new smile loaded with promises and secrets. "Because I want you to remember it forever when it finally happens." The nights became an exercise in delicious restraint. They'd lie together, intertwined, exploring with touches that were simultaneously innocent and loaded with intention. Andrew learned Kate through her skin. He discovered that she shivered when he kissed the exact spot behind her ear, that she arched her back when he traced the line of her spine with his fingertips, that she held her breath when he slid his hand along the side of her thigh, moving up slowly, but never reaching where she really wanted. He was learning, and she was teaching not with words, but with sighs, muffled moans, the way her body responded to his every movement. One night they were lying side by side, face to face, legs intertwined. The soft light from the bedside lamp created golden shadows on his face. Kate ran her fingers over his features, the strong line of his jaw, the straight nose, the lips that now knew every inch of hers. "You've changed," she said softly. "How so?" "You're present. Not just here, but really present with me." Andrew captured her hand, kissed her palm, then her wrist where her pulse beat rapidly. "I was afraid," he confessed. "For a long time, afraid I didn't know how to touch you, how to love you the way you deserved. So I did nothing, and that was worse. And now I know it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real." He pulled her closer, eliminating any space between them. Their legs tangled more, their bodies adjusting like pieces, finally finding their place. He kissed her forehead, then the tip of her nose, then finally her lips, a slow, deep kiss that said more than words ever could. His hands wandered over her back, sliding up under her t-shirt, finding bare skin. She moaned softly, arching against him. She felt his body's reaction, the quickened breathing, the tense muscles, the control he was fighting to maintain. "Andrew," she whispered against his lips. "I want." "I know," he interrupted gently. "I want to too. But not yet, Kate." She moaned in frustration, but also something deeper because she understood. He wasn't making her wait out of cruelty. He was building something, creating a foundation, so that when it finally happened, it would be unforgettable. "You're torturing me," she murmured. "I'm worshiping you," he corrected and kissed her again. The following Saturday, Andrew made breakfast. Kate came downstairs in her nightgown, hair messy, eyes still sleepy. He had his back to her, stirring something on the stove. She approached silently, wrapping her arms around his waist. He stopped what he was doing, placed his hands over hers. "Good morning," he said, turning in her arms. "Good morning," she replied, smiling. He looked at her, really looked as if he was seeing her for the first time. Then he slid his hands over her shoulders, down her arms, back up the sides of her body, stopping at her waist. "You know what drives me crazy?" he asked, his voice husky. "What?" "The way you look at me. Like I'm the only person in the world. Like nothing else matters." Kate placed her hands on his chest, feeling his racing heart beneath her palms. "Because to me, you are. You're everything." He lifted her effortlessly, sitting her on the counter. He stood between her legs, his hands firm on her hips. Their eyes were level now, his face inches from hers. "I need you, Kate," he confessed. "In a way I never knew it was possible to need someone, then have me." she whispered. And something in the air changed. A decision was made without words. A promise was sealed with a look. Soon, very soon, there would be no more waiting. The tension between them had become almost tangible. Kate felt it in the air they breathed, in the shrinking space between their bodies, in the way Andrew's gaze lingered on her with an intensity that made her tremble inside. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was need. She'd wake up in the morning to find Andrew already awake, watching her not with that distant look from before, but with hunger. A hunger he no longer hid, that blazed in his dark eyes like living embers. "Do you watch me sleep?" she asked one of those mornings, her voice still rough with sleep. "I can't help it," he replied, running his fingers across her face, tracing the outline of her lips. "You're so beautiful like this, relaxed, vulnerable, and all mine." The possessive way he said mine sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't possession in the sense of control. It was possession in the sense of mutual belonging. She was his in the same way he was hers. Kate turned completely toward him, pressing her body against his under the sheets. She felt his immediate reaction, his breathing becoming irregular, muscles tensing, heat radiating between them. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me how much you want me." Andrew moaned softly, burying his face in her neck, his lips finding the sensitive skin there. He kissed, nibbled lightly, sucked in a way that would leave a mark. And Kate didn't mind. She wanted to carry his marks. She wanted the world to know she belonged to someone. His hand slid down her back underneath her nightgown, fingers exploring every inch of bare skin. She arched her back, pressing harder against him, feeling every rigid muscle, every ragged breath. "Kate," he murmured against her skin, his voice tight with control. "If you keep this up, I won't be able to stop." "Then don't stop," she replied, pulling his face to hers for a kiss. It was a kiss different from all the others. There was urgency there, desperation, years of restraint finally overflowing. Tongues met, explored, devoured each other. Hands wandered without restriction, his over her curves, hers over his tense muscles. Andrew rolled on top of her, the weight of his body pressing her into the mattress in a way that made her feel small, protected, desired. He held her wrists, raising her arms above her head, pinning them there while he looked at her. "I have no idea," he said, his voice almost a growl, "how much I think about you, how much I dream about this. About you, like this underneath me, completely mine." Kate felt heat spread through her body, concentrating low, insistent, pulsing. "Andrew, please," she begged, not caring about the pleading tone of her own voice. But he pulled back, releasing her wrists, breathing deeply as if trying to compose himself. "Not yet," he said. But there was pain in his voice, as if refusing was painful for him too. "I promised myself that when it happened, it would be perfect. And it will be soon. Very soon." One morning, Kate was getting dressed in the bedroom, choosing clothes for the day. She wore only panties and a bra, her hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She didn't notice when Andrew entered, stopped in the doorway, and simply watched. When she finally noticed his presence, she turned. His gaze traveled over her from head to toe, slow, appreciative, hungry. There was no shame in him, only pure admiration. "Sorry," he said, but didn't look away. "I should have knocked." "You don't need to apologize," she replied, feeling the power she had over him, the way his body reacted just from seeing her. "Like what you see." He took a step into the room, then another, his eyes never leaving her body. "Like is way too weak a term for what I'm feeling right now." Kate felt courage grow inside her. She turned her back to him, looking over her shoulder. "Then come here and show me." She heard the sound of his breathing becoming heavy, felt when he approached, stopping right behind her. The heat from his body radiated but didn't touch yet. Then slowly he slid his fingers down her spine from the top, descending vertebra by vertebra until stopping at the lower curve of her back. Kate closed her eyes, trembling under the touch. "You smell like lavender," he murmured, leaning in to inhale the scent at the curve of her neck. "And something else, something that drives me completely crazy." He pressed his lips there, kissing, nibbling, sucking. His hands found her waist, pulling her back against his body. Kate felt everything, the firmness, the desire, the need he could no longer hide. "Feel that?" he asked, his voice strained. Feel what you do to me?" She moaned, tilting her head to give more access to her neck. "Yes," she whispered, "and I want more." Andrew turned her in his arms, his hands moving up the sides of her body, stopping just below her breasts. His eyes sought hers dark, full of something wild that was being barely contained. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Really kiss you? The way I've wanted to for weeks?" "Yes," she barely managed to say before his lips captured hers. It was a desperate kiss, hands wandering shamelessly, his exploring every curve, hers scratching his back over his shirt, tongues intertwining, breaths mixing, muffled moans filling the room. Andrew lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. He pressed her against the wall, his body anchoring hers there. They kissed until they lost their breath, until her legs trembled, until the world around them disappeared completely. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Andrew rested his forehead against hers, eyes still closed. "I can't wait anymore," he confessed. "I need you, Kate, in a way that's consuming me." "Then don't wait anymore," she begged. "Have me today, now." He opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her hold her breath. Determination, desire, and love. So much love, it hurt from its intensity. "Tonight," he promised, kissing her again, gentle this time, "I'll prepare everything. And when I finally have you, Kate, it will be unforgettable." The rest of the day passed in a fog of anticipation. Kate could barely concentrate on anything. Every message from Andrew during the day was loaded with veiled promises. "Thinking about you. Can't wait to come home. Tonight, you'll be completely mine." When the time came, she dressed carefully, a simple dress that highlighted every curve, hair down, perfume on her neck and wrists, heart racing with nervousness and excitement. She went downstairs and found the house, transformed candles scattered throughout the room, soft light creating dancing shadows on the walls, her quiet playlist playing soft guitars, voices whispering about desire and surrender. And in the center of it all, Andrew in a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You prepared all this?" she asked, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "For you," he replied. "Always for you." He extended his hand. She took it, and when he pulled her into his arms, when their lips met in that kiss full of promises about to be fulfilled, Kate knew this night would change everything, and she was more than ready. The house was quiet, wrapped in an atmosphere of expectation. The smell of wine and something baking in the oven filled the air, mixing with the aroma of candles scattered throughout the room. Kate could hear her own heart beating strong, fast, echoing in her ears like distant drums announcing something inevitable. Andrew was in the kitchen, finishing the final preparations for dinner. She watched him from the doorway, leaning against the frame. There was something different about him that night, a new confidence in the way he moved, a determination in the set of his shoulders. He wasn't nervous. He was certain. As if sensing the weight of her gaze, Andrew turned. Their eyes met across the kitchen, and something electric passed between them, an invisible current, but so real Kate could almost touch it. "Come here," he said, his voice low but firm. It wasn't a request. It was a gentle command. Kate approached barefoot, the dress brushing her thighs with each step. When she got close enough, Andrew turned off the stove, wiped his hands on the dish towel, and turned completely toward her. For a moment, they just looked at each other, studying, memorizing, preparing to cross a line that once crossed would change them forever. Then Andrew extended his hand. Kate took it, feeling the warmth, the firmness, the intention. He pulled her close, eliminating any space between them. With his free hand, he brushed the hair from her face, his fingers lingering on the curve of her neck. "Are you sure?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Because once I start, Kate, I don't know if I'll be able to stop." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his racing heart beneath her palm. "Then don't stop," she whispered. "Show me everything you've held back for so long." Something broke inside him. Kate saw it in his eyes, the last thread of restraint snapping. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was hungry, desperate, years of desire finally released. His hands were everywhere, on her face, on her neck, sliding down her back, gripping her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. Kate responded with the same intensity, fingers tangled in his hair, nails lightly scraping his scalp, drawing out a hoarse moan from him that made her tremble. Andrew lifted her effortlessly, sitting her on the kitchen counter. He stood between her legs, his hands moving up her thighs, pushing her dress upward. His eyes followed the path of his hands, dark, hungry, possessive. "You're so beautiful," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "So perfect." He leaned in, kissing the curve where her neck met her shoulder. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a mark. He sucked, nibbled, licked, leaving his presence engraved on her skin. Kate threw her head back, offering more access, moaning softly when his teeth found the exact spot that made her lose control. "Andrew," she gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders. "Please." He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. There was something wild there, but also reverent, as if she were simultaneously his prey and his goddess. "Not here," he said, his voice rough. "Not like this. You deserve more." Before she could respond, he lifted her from the counter, holding her by the hips. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck. He carried her through the house, past the room of flickering candles, up the stairs, each step measured, deliberate. Kate kissed his neck during the journey, small kisses, light bites, tongue tracing the rapid pulse beating there. She felt when he stumbled slightly on the last step, heard the muffled moan that escaped him. "You're going to kill me before we even get to the bedroom," he murmured, but there was humor in his voice, and desire. So much desire. Finally, they reached the bedroom. Andrew set her down carefully but didn't let go. His hands remained on her waist, firm, anchored. He looked around at the bed covered with clean sheets, at the candles he'd lit earlier, at the soft light that made everything intimate, sacred. Then he looked back at her, and Kate saw the vulnerability return for an instant. "I want it to be perfect for you," he confessed. "I want to make you feel everything you deserve to feel." Kate placed her hands on his face, forcing him to look into her eyes. "It's already perfect," she said firmly, "because it's you, because it's us, because we're finally here." He smiled, that smile that was only for her. Then he leaned in and kissed her gently, this time reverently. A kiss that was a promise, a prayer, a beginning. When they pulled apart, he began unbuttoning her dress slowly, one button at a time, his eyes fixed on hers, watching every reaction, every sigh. When the fabric finally slid off her shoulders and fell to the floor, he stepped back just to look. Kate stood there in simple lingerie, but to him it was as if she wore something from a goddess. He reached out, touching her with his fingertips, shoulder, collarbone, down the valley between her breasts, tracing her waist. "Perfect," he whispered. "You're absolutely perfect." Kate felt the blush rise to her cheeks but didn't look away. She stepped toward him, beginning to unbutton his shirt. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't stop, button by button, revealing tanned skin, defined muscles, the marks of a life lived. When the shirt fell, she ran her hands over his chest, feeling the warmth, the muscles tensing under her touch, the racing heart. "My turn to say it," she murmured. "You're beautiful, Andrew, and you're mine." He groaned, capturing her lips in a kiss that quickly deepened. His hands found the clasp of her bra, opening it with an ease that surprised her. The piece fell, and then there were no more barriers. Andrew stepped back, looking at her with an intensity that made her tremble. Then, slowly, he placed his hands on her breasts, feeling the weight, caressing, his thumbs passing over hardened nipples. Kate arched her back, a moan escaping her lips. The sensation was electric, running through every nerve ending, concentrating low, pulsing. "Lie down for me," he asked, his voice thick with barely contained desire. She obeyed, lying on the bed, her hair spread across the pillow, her eyes fixed on him. Andrew removed the rest of their clothes, his and hers, until there was nothing between them but skin and desire. He lay beside her, propped on his elbow, just looking. His free hand traced invisible patterns along her arm, down the side of her body, along her thigh, moving up again. "I dreamed about this," he confessed. "About you like this, with me completely mine." "Then stop dreaming," she whispered, "and have me." And he did, slowly, reverently. Each touch a discovery, each kiss a promise. He explored every inch of her, learning what made her sigh, what made her moan, what made her arch and beg. And when they finally joined, when their bodies fit together as if made for each other, Kate knew that nothing would be the same as before. This was the first time, the first true time, and it was only the beginning. The world had shrunk to just the two of them. Nothing else existed beyond the room bathed in soft candlelight, beyond intertwined breaths, beyond skin against skin. Kate felt each beat of her own heart echoing through her body, feeling simultaneously vulnerable and powerful under Andrew's gaze. He laid her down with reverent delicacy, as if she were made of something precious that could break. But there was firmness, too, in the hands that held her hips, in the eyes that didn't stray from hers for even a second, in the way his body positioned itself over hers without hurry, but with clear intention. "You're trembling," he murmured, running his fingers across her face, brushing away a strand of hair that had fallen over her eyes. "I'm nervous," she confessed, honest and excited, "and scared of how intense this feels." Andrew leaned in, kissing her forehead, then the tip of her nose, then finally her lips, soft, comforting. "I am too," he admitted. "But we're in this together, you and me, like it always should have been." He began to descend. He kissed her jaw, the curve of her neck, her collarbone, each kiss lingering, intentional, leaving invisible marks she knew she'd carry forever. His hands traced the path before his lips down her shoulders, tracing her waist, gripping her hips. When he reached her neck, he paused. He looked up, seeking permission in her eyes. Kate only nodded, unable to form words. And then he sucked gently on that sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, making her arch her back. Kate moaned softly, a sound she didn't even know she could make. Her hands found his hair, holding, pulling, keeping him there. Andrew continued his exploration, kissing along her collarbone, down the center of her chest, across her belly. His hands slid along the sides of her body, exploring every curve, every inch of skin, as if memorizing a sacred map. He continued downward. He kissed her belly, his tongue tracing the outline of her navel. His hands slid along her thighs, opening them slowly, creating space for him to position himself there. Kate felt her heart race, vulnerability and desire mixed in an intoxicating combination. She could feel his breath there, hot against the most sensitive skin, and her whole body trembled in anticipation. "You're so beautiful," Andrew murmured, more to himself than to her. "Perfect in every way." When his mouth finally found her center, Kate nearly came off the bed. The sensation was electric, overwhelming, making it impossible to think about anything beyond that moment, that touch, that tongue, exploring her with a dedication that bordered on worship. "Andrew," she gasped, her hands gripping the sheets, then his hair, not knowing where to anchor herself. "Oh God, Andrew." He didn't respond with words. He only intensified his tongue, tracing patterns that made her see stars, his fingers joining the exploration, entering slowly, curving, finding that spot that made her cry out. Kate felt herself coming apart. Every nerve ending was on fire. Every muscle tense, her entire being focused on that growing sensation building, rising, rising. "Let go," Andrew murmured against her, the vibration of his voice adding another layer of sensation. "Let me feel you, Kate. Let me see you like this." And she did. The orgasm hit her like a wave, sweeping everything away, leaving her trembling, breathless, completely lost in the sensation. Andrew guided her through it, not stopping until he felt the last tremor, until the last sigh. When he finally came back up, his face glistening with the evidence of her surrender, his eyes were dark, hungry, but also struck with awe. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said, his voice rough. "And I can hardly believe you're mine." Kate pulled him into a kiss, deep, desperate, tasting herself on his lips. It was intimate in a way that made her feel completely connected to him. "Your turn," she whispered against his lips. But Andrew shook his head. "This is about you," he said. "It's always been about you." "No," she corrected, her hands sliding over his body, feeling the tense muscles, the hot skin, the clear evidence of how much he desired her. "This is about us together." She turned him over, straddling him, her eyes fixed on his. She saw the surprise there, but also the desire intensifying. His hands immediately went to her hips, holding, guiding. Kate positioned herself, feeling him there ready, pulsing. For a moment, they just stayed like that, looking into each other's eyes, breathing together on the threshold of something that would change them forever. Then, Slowly, she lowered herself. The sensation was overwhelming fullness, connection, two becoming one in a way that transcended the physical. Kate closed her eyes, her head falling back, a long moan escaping as she adjusted to him. Andrew's hands tightened on her hips, his fingers digging into her flesh, leaving marks she knew she'd be happy to carry. "Kate," he moaned, his voice tight with barely maintained control. "You're killing me. So perfect. So tight. So mine." She began to move slowly at first, finding the rhythm, learning what made them both moan. Andrew guided her with his hands but let her lead, watching every movement, every expression, memorizing everything. When she leaned forward, it changed the angle in a way that made her see stars. Andrew took advantage to capture her lips in deep kisses, his hands exploring her back, down the curve of her spine, intensifying every sensation. "I can't hold on," she gasped, the rhythm accelerating, chasing something she felt building. "Andrew, I know," he said, turning them in a smooth motion until she was on her back again and he was over her. "Let me take care of you." He took control then, deep, measured thrusts, each one hitting exactly where she needed. One hand held her hip, the other intertwined with hers beside her head, fingers interlaced, connected in every possible way. Kate wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, closer, more everything. Their eyes remained fixed on each other, seeing every emotion, every sensation, every moment of vulnerability and strength. "I'm close," she gasped. "Andrew, I'm with me?" he asked, his voice strained. "Come with me, Kate. Together." And together they came. The orgasm hit her with renewed force, more intense for sharing it, for feeling Andrew shatter at the same time, for hearing her name on his lips like a prayer, a curse, a blessing. They trembled together, breathed together, came back to earth together. Afterward, when their heartbeats slowed and reality began to return, they remained intertwined. Andrew rolled to his side, pulling her to his chest, his arms wrapping around her as if he'd never let go. He kissed her shoulders, her back, the nape of her neck, murmured meaningless words that were all about affection and reverence. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever felt," he whispered against her skin. And Kate, with silent tears sliding down her face, not from sadness, but from pure, overwhelming happiness, finally understood what it meant to be completely seen, completely desired, completely loved. The days following that night carried a different quality, as if the world had changed color, texture, temperature. Kate would wake up and feel the change in the way light came through the window, in the smell of sheets that still held their mingled scent, in the sensation of skin still sensitive from so many touches. Andrew hadn't pulled back. He hadn't retreated to that distant place where he used to live. On the contrary, it was as if the floodgates had opened all at once, and now he no longer knew how to stop touching her, seeking her out, showing in every small gesture how much she meant. On the first morning after, Kate woke to kisses being planted along the line of her spine, slowly, reverently, as if Andrew were rediscovering every inch he'd explored the night before. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice husky from sleep and from other sounds she'd made hours earlier. "Good morning, my love," he replied against her skin, and the term of endearment made her smile. It wasn't the first time he'd called her that, but now it carried a different weight, a deeper truth. She turned in his arms, fitting perfectly against his body, their faces inches apart, breaths mixing, sleepy eyes meeting. "Are you okay?" he asked, running his fingers through her messy hair. Wasn't I too much?" Kate laughed softly, touching his face. "You were perfect. You were everything I needed, everything I always wanted." Something relaxed in his shoulders, as if he'd been holding a worry he could only now release. "I spent so much time afraid," he confessed. "Afraid I didn't know how to love you right, how to touch you, how to make you feel what you deserve to feel. And now I know it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real and honest and full of you." He kissed her then, soft, deep, full of promises of more mornings like this, more nights, more shared life in every touch. The intimacy wasn't confined to the bedroom. It spread to every corner of the house, infiltrating the most ordinary moments, transforming the mundane into extraordinary. Kate was in the bathroom washing her face when she felt Andrew approach from behind. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder, and watched her through the mirror's reflection. "What are you doing?" she asked, smiling, reaching for the towel to dry her face. "Watching you," he replied simply. "I like watching you do normal things. There's something intimate about it, something real." She turned in his arms, her arms rising to wrap around his neck. "You're turning into a romantic." "I always was," he corrected. "I just didn't know how to show it." He kissed her right there against the bathroom sink with toothpaste still at the corner of her mouth and messy hair. And it was perfect precisely because it was imperfect. At the grocery store, while choosing vegetables for dinner, Andrew kept his hand firm on her waist. It wasn't possessive in the sense of control. It was possessive in the sense of, "I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours." Kate noticed the glances some women watched with discreet envy, others with approval, but she didn't care about any of them. All that mattered was the way Andrew looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever held. "Tomatoes or peppers?" she asked, pretending not to notice the look. "You decide," he said. But his fingers were tracing circles on her waist beneath her blouse, touching bare skin. "Andrew," she whispered, feeling the heat rise. "We're in public." "I know," he replied, smiling in a way she now recognized mischievous, confident. "But I can't stop touching you. It's like my body needs constant confirmation that you're here with me. Real." She turned, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him quickly. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Dinners became different. Before, they ate in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Now, Andrew held her hand across the table while they ate his thumb-drawing patterns on her palm. "Tell me about your day," he'd ask, and he really listened. He didn't just hear. He listened. He asked questions, took interest, cared. And Kate did the same. She learned about his challenges at work, about the colleagues who annoyed him, about the projects that excited him. Conversations that once seemed superficial now gained depth because there was a genuine connection sustaining every word. One night after dinner, Kate was washing dishes when Andrew approached from behind. She was already expecting the hug, the kiss on her neck, the closeness that had become constant. But this time he stopped beside her, picked up a dish towel, and started drying the dishes she was washing. "What are you doing?" she asked, surprised. "Helping," he replied as if it were obvious. "We do this together now. Everything together." Something tightened inside Kate's chest. It wasn't just about dishes. It was about life, about partnership, about choosing to share even the most mundane moments, because being together was better than being alone. She rested her head on his shoulder for a moment, just feeling the solid, real, constant presence. "I love you," she said, and it was the first time she'd said it out loud since everything had changed. Andrew stopped what he was doing. He set the plate aside, turned Kate to face him, held her face between his hands. "I love you, too," he said, his eyes shining with emotion. "I always have. I was just learning how to show it." They kissed there in the lit kitchen with dishes half done and water running, and it was perfect. The nights remained intense. Andrew explored Kate as if each time were the first, with reverence, curiosity, dedication. He learned what made her moan, what made her sigh, what made her beg. And she learned him too. She discovered that he shivered when she kissed that specific spot just below his ear, that he moaned when she lightly scratched his back, that he came completely undone when she whispered how much she wanted him. But it wasn't just about sex. It was about connection, about vulnerability, about choosing every day to be present, to be open, to be willing to love without reservation. One night, lying intertwined after making love, Andrew traced lazy circles on her back. "You know what I realized?" he murmured. "What?" "That I was alive before, but I wasn't living." "Not really. You taught me the difference." Kate lifted her face, looking into his eyes. "You taught me that it's worth waiting for the right thing. That true intimacy is worth more than any rush." They smiled at each other, that shared smile that was only theirs, full of secrets, promises, future. And Kate knew with the certainty that only the heart can give that this was just the beginning of a lifetime of small gestures that meant big things, of touches that said, "I choose you," of love that grew not despite the ordinary days, but because of them. Because true love didn't just live in the big moments. It lived in shared mornings, in dishes washed together, in stolen kisses at the grocery store, in hugs from behind for no reason. It lived in the small gestures that built day by day a life worth living together. 3 months had passed since that night that changed everything. 3 months of discoveries, of growing intimacy, of a connection that deepened with each day. Kate felt as if she'd been reborn, not just as a woman, but as a complete person, seen, desired, loved in every sense. Life with Andrew had become a synchronized dance. They moved together through the house, through routine, through life, with an ease that only comes when two people finally stop fighting against what they are and simply allow themselves to be. But in recent weeks, Kate had started noticing changes. Small at first, a tiredness that didn't pass even after a full night's sleep, a tenderness in her breasts that made her avoid Andrew's tighter hugs, a morning nausea that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. She tried to ignore it, convince herself it was work stress, change of season, anything but what her heart was already whispering was true, until one morning, while brushing her teeth, the smell of toothpaste, the same one she'd used for years, sent her running to the toilet. Andrew appeared in the bathroom doorway, his face worried. "Kate, are you okay?" She waved, rinsing her mouth, trying to regain her composure. "Yes, must have been something I ate yesterday," she lied. But her own voice didn't sound convincing even to herself. Andrew didn't seem to believe her, but didn't insist. He just held her hair back, ran a comforting hand down her back, and stayed there present, as he always was now. Kate bought the test on the way home. 3. Actually, because part of her needed triple confirmation to believe what she already knew was true. She waited until Andrew left for a work meeting, locked herself in the bathroom, hands trembling as she opened the first box. Read the instructions 3 times, even though she already knew exactly what to do. 3 minutes. She needed to wait 3 minutes. They were the longest 3 minutes of her life. Kate sat on the edge of the bathtub, eyes fixed on the small plastic stick on the sink. Her heart was beating so loud she could hear it, feel the pulse in her fingertips, in her throat, in her temples. She thought about Andrew, about the way he'd transformed in recent months, about the man who'd learned to love without fear, to touch without hesitation, to be present without reservation. She thought about the future they'd begun building together, brick by brick, kiss by kiss, shared moment by shared moment. And she thought about what a positive test, because part of her already knew it would be positive, would mean for them, for the love that was still so new, so fragile, so precious. The phone alarm went off. 3 minutes. Kate stood up, legs trembling, and picked up the test. 2 lines, dark pink, unmistakable. She sat down again, staring at the result. Then she took the second test, then the third. All the same, all confirming what her body had been trying to tell her. She was pregnant. Tears began sliding down her face. She didn't even notice when she started crying. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was an overwhelming mixture of emotions she couldn't name: joy, terror, hope, uncertainty. How would she tell Andrew? How would he react? They'd barely started this new phase of their relationship. Would it be too soon? Kate shook her head, interrupting the spiraling thoughts. She knew Andrew, the man he'd become, the man he'd always been, just hidden under layers of fear and insecurity. He would be incredible. She knew that with the same certainty she knew her own name. Kate planned the revelation carefully. She didn't want to just tell him. She wanted to create a moment, something they'd remember forever. She prepared his favorite dinner, set the table carefully, lit candles, put on soft music, and beside his plate she left a small white box wrapped with a silver ribbon. Inside, a pair of tiny gray baby shoes, minuscule, perfect, and a note in her handwriting. "Our love now has one more heartbeat." She heard the key in the door, the familiar sound of his footsteps, the tired sigh of someone who'd just spent the entire day in meetings, and then silence when he probably noticed the set table, the candles, the care in every detail. "Kate?" he called, his voice curious. "In the kitchen," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Andrew appeared in the doorway, his tie already loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up. He stopped, looking around, a slow smile forming. "What's all this? Special dinner?" "Sit down," she said, her hands trembling slightly as she poured wine into his glass, water into hers, a detail she hoped he wouldn't notice yet. He obeyed, but his eyes followed her, noticing something different, something she wasn't saying. They ate, making light conversation about his day, about her work, about nothing and everything at the same time. Kate could barely eat, her stomach churning with nervousness, her heart racing with anticipation. Finally, after the plates were cleared, she pushed the little box toward him. "What's this?" Andrew asked, picking it up, feeling the light weight. "Open it," she said, her voice coming out more shaky than intended. He untied the ribbon, opened the lid, pulled out the tissue paper, and then stopped. Completely stopped. Kate watched his face change: initial confusion, then slow understanding, then something she couldn't name: shock, joy, fear. He picked up the baby shoes with trembling fingers so small in the palm of his hand, then read the note once, twice, as if the words might change if he read them again. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were shining wet with unshed tears. We're pregnant." She finished because he seemed incapable of saying the word. "I'm pregnant, Andrew. We're going to have a baby." For a moment, he didn't move. He just sat there holding those tiny shoes, looking at her as if seeing a miracle. Then he stood up so fast the chair almost toppled. He rounded the table in 3 long strides, knelt before her, his hands immediately going to her still flat belly, touching with a reverence that brought new tears to her eyes. "There's a baby in here?" he whispered, his voice full of wonder. "Our baby?" Kate nodded, unable to speak, tears finally falling freely. Andrew pressed his forehead to her belly, his shoulders shaking. She realized he was crying, silent but intense. "I'm going to be a father," he said, more to himself than to her. "We're going to be parents." He lifted his face, and Kate saw everything there: love, joy, fear, determination. She saw the man who'd learned to love without reservation, taking another giant step toward even greater vulnerability. "I'm going to love you both," he promised, his voice firm despite the tears. "Every day, in every way. You're my whole world now." Kate slid from the chair to the floor with him, wrapping him in her arms. They stayed like that, kneeling in the middle of the kitchen, embracing, crying tears of joy and fear and hope. "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. Andrew pulled back enough to look into her eyes. He held her face between his hands, his thumbs wiping away the tears. "Happy doesn't even come close to describing what I'm feeling," he said. "I'm terrified and excited and grateful and completely in love with you and this life we created together." He kissed her then, deep, full of promises and gratitude and love so intense it seemed to overflow. When they pulled apart, Andrew placed his hand on her belly again, as if he could already feel the life growing there. "Hi, little one," he whispered, his voice soft, full of tenderness. "It's me, your dad. And I already love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." And in that moment, with the candles flickering around them, with the tiny shoes on the table, with his hands on her belly, Kate knew everything had been worth it. The waiting, the frustration, the years of silence, everything had led to this moment, to this family, to this love that kept growing, blooming, creating life. The 9 months that followed were a journey of transformations. Kate watched her own body change, her belly growing, rounding, sheltering the life they were creating together. But more impressive than the physical changes were the changes in Andrew. He'd become even more attentive, if that was possible. He'd wake up in the middle of the night when she couldn't sleep, massaging her swollen feet, bringing water, simply being there, present. He'd talk to her belly every night, telling about his day, reading stories, singing off-key songs that made Kate laugh and cry at the same time. "You're going to be an amazing father," she said one night, watching him with his hand on her belly, feeling the baby's kicks. "I'm going to try," he replied, his eyes shining with emotion. "Every day, I'll try to be the father and husband you both deserve." The room that had been a makeshift office transformed into a nursery. Andrew painted the walls a soft gray, assembled the crib with meticulous care, hung curtains that filtered light in golden tones. Kate organized the tiny clothes. Impossible to believe something so small would dress a real human being soon. They chose the name together, lying in bed on a lazy Sunday afternoon, hands intertwined over the belly that now seemed enormous. "Charlotte," Andrew suggested. "I've always liked that name. It means strong and free." "Charlotte," Kate repeated, testing how it sounded. "Charlotte. I love it." And so their daughter got her name before she even met the world. Labor started on a Tuesday at dawn. Kate woke to a low, constant pain different from anything she'd felt before. She touched Andrew's shoulder, her voice calm despite the nervousness. "Andrew, I think it's time." He sat up so fast he almost fell out of bed, eyes wide, hair messy, wearing only his sleepwear. "Now? Right now? Are you sure? What do I do? Where's the bag? Where are the keys? Kate took his face between her hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "Breathe," she said, smiling despite the contraction that was starting to build. "We practiced this. You know what to do." Andrew took a deep breath, then another. And then the practical part of him took control. He helped her get dressed, grabbed the already packed bag, called the hospital to let them know they were on their way. In the car, he held her hand through each contraction, counting with her, breathing together, offering words of encouragement. "You're the strongest woman I know," he'd say whenever a contraction passed. "You can do this. We can do this." At the hospital, Andrew didn't leave her side for even a second. He held her hand when the pain became unbearable, wiped the sweat from her forehead, whispered words of love and encouragement when she thought she couldn't take any more. "I can't do this," she cried at one point, exhausted, desperate. "You can," he insisted, kissing her forehead. "You're already doing it. Just a little more, my love. Just a little more. And she'll be here." And then, after hours that seemed simultaneously eternal and instantaneous, Charlotte's first cry filled the room. Kate collapsed on the pillow, exhausted, crying, laughing, feeling an overwhelming mixture of relief and joy and love so intense it seemed impossible to fit inside her chest. "It's a beautiful, healthy girl," the nurse announced, quickly cleaning the baby before placing her on Kate's chest. And there, finally, she was. Charlotte, small, perfect, with an indignant expression on her tiny red face, fists clenched, eyes squeezed shut against the light of the new world. Kate looked at her, then at Andrew, who stood beside the bed, tears running freely down his face, eyes fixed on his daughter as if seeing a miracle. "Want to hold her?" Kate asked, extending the baby to him. Andrew nodded, unable to speak. He extended his arms with reverent care as if holding something sacred. And when Charlotte was placed in his arms for the first time, something in him broke and rebuilt itself simultaneously. "Hi, Charlotte," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's me, your daddy. And you're perfect." He held her as if he'd never let go, kissed her tiny forehead, her even tinier fingers, murmured promises of protection and love and dedication. Kate watched, her heart so full it seemed impossible not to overflow. Here was her family complete, real, more beautiful than any dream she'd ever had. The first days at home were a chaotic mix of diapers, feedings every 2 hours, sleep deprivation, and a happiness so pure it made everything bearable. Andrew proved to be a natural father. He changed diapers without complaining, woke up for middle-of-the-night feedings, walked around the house holding Charlotte against his chest, singing softly until she fell asleep. Kate would watch these moments often from afar, just appreciating the sight of the man she loved, loving their daughter with an intensity that left her speechless. One afternoon, Kate woke from a nap to find Andrew in Charlotte's room, sitting in the nursing chair with the baby sleeping in his arms. He was just looking at her as if memorizing every detail of her tiny face. "She's so small," he whispered when he noticed Kate in the doorway. "So perfect. Sometimes I still can't believe she's real, that she's ours." Kate approached, sitting on the arm of the chair, her hand resting on his shoulder. "She's real. And she's ours. And look what an incredible father she has." Andrew looked at her, his eyes shining. "I always thought I didn't know how to love," he confessed. "But you taught me. You showed me I wasn't broken, just waiting for the right person to teach me." Kate leaned in, kissing him softly. "We taught each other." Weeks passed, then months. Charlotte grew too fast, according to Andrew, who mourned each outfit she outgrew. She started smiling first, just reflexes, then real smiles that lit up her little face and completely melted any remnant of resistance Andrew might have had. Kate would watch the two of them together and see the complete transformation. The man who'd been afraid to touch now spent hours with his daughter in his arms. The man who'd guarded his emotions now cried openly whenever Charlotte did something new, rolling over, holding a toy, making a sound that resembled "da." On a Sunday afternoon, The three of them were in the backyard, Charlotte on a blanket on the grass, Andrew lying beside her, making faces that drew delicious giggles from the baby. Kate watched from a distance, her heart so full it seemed impossible to fit anything more. Andrew looked up, meeting her eyes. He extended his hand, inviting her to join them. Kate lay down on Charlotte's other side, the three of them forming a small circle in the afternoon sun. "You know what I was thinking?" Andrew said, looking at the blue sky, his hand holding Kate's over their daughter's body. "What?" "That I was always this man, this father, this husband. I was just waiting for you to bring me to life." Kate squeezed his hand. "And I always knew this man existed inside you. He just needed time to emerge." Charlotte made a little sound, something between a squeal and a laugh, calling both their attention. They looked at her, then at each other, and smiled. "She's going to grow up knowing what it means to be loved," Andrew said. "Completely, without reservation, without fear. Because she has you," Kate replied. "She has us." They stayed there as the sun descended on the horizon, painting the sky gold and pink. A family, imperfect, real, built on broken silences and the courage to start over. And as Charlotte babbled between them, as Andrew hummed softly, as Kate felt the complete peace that only comes when you find your place in the world, she thought, if true love exists, this is exactly what it looks like. Not in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in lazy Sundays in the backyard, in shared middle-of-the-night moments, in hands held over a daughter's body, in looks that say everything without needing words, in a man who learned to touch, in a woman who taught, in a child born from love that finally found its way. This was their home, built on the ruins of silence, raised with courage and vulnerability, cemented with love that grew every day. And it was perfect precisely because it was real. Kate looked through the bedroom window, watching Andrew in the garden with Charlotte in his arms. He was pointing at the flowers, whispering things she didn't understand yet but one day would make sense. And she realized, true love doesn't arrive with a bang. It arrives in the silence of hands that finally learn to touch. It arrives in the courage of a man who decided to cross through fear. It arrives in the patience of a woman who waited, believed, taught. Their marriage didn't begin that night in the kitchen. It began again, and sometimes beginning again is the bravest act of all, because it requires us to be vulnerable when it's easier to protect ourselves, to reach out when it's safer to pull away.